Ready to really dig into what's driving one of the world's biggest economies? Today, we're diving deep, no, like really deep, into India. We're going to figure out which states are like the economic stars, which ones are kind of lagging behind, and why you should even care.
We're going way beyond just the headlines you usually see. We're talking 6 decades of data to really uncover those hidden trends in India and what's driving success.
Our guide for this whole thing, it's this research paper, super catchy title, Relative Economic Performance of Indian States, 1960-61 to 2023-24. And look, I know what you're thinking, a research paper on like a Friday night?
Yeah, not exactly a party, right?
Right. But seriously, stick with us. We took this whole data goldmine, all the numbers, the trends, and boiled it down to the good stuff, the really interesting stuff. By the end of this deep dive, you'll be like the smartest person at your next dinner party when it comes to India.
We're going to focus on 2 big things. First, how much each state contributes to India's whole GDP, so basically their economic weight class. Second, we're looking at per capita income. So that tells you how much the average person makes compared to everyone else.
Think of it like checking out different stock portfolios, but instead of companies, we're talking entire states. So get ready, because we're about to find out who the winners and losers are in India's economic landscape, and some pretty surprising comeback stories, too.
More importantly, we'll be talking about what these trends actually mean. Like, what do they tell us about India's future? And what can other countries, countries still developing, learn from all of this?
First up, let's head south. This region is so interesting, because it wasn't always killing it economically. But then the 90s hit, liberalization happens, and things changed fast.
Absolutely, yeah. The South, especially Karnataka and Telangana, they really went for it. Globalization, they were ready, they got investments, built up a skilled workforce, and they got themselves right into those key industries.
And the proof is in the numbers, right? Karnataka's GDP share has almost doubled since 1991. Doubled. They're like a top 3 player in India now. It's like they figured out the secret formula or something. What's crazy is they didn't always have that advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how much policies, government policies, can really shake things up. Imagine some quiet town suddenly becoming like Silicon Valley. That's kind of what happened in parts of South India.
It really makes you wonder, what can other states learn from what the South did right?
That's the million-dollar question, and we're going to unpack it throughout this whole deep dive. But one thing's for sure. The South didn't just get lucky. They made some smart choices, and it paid off big time.
Okay, so Karnataka is like the star pupil. What about the other southern states? Are they keeping up?
Telangana is right there with them, their per capita income, a whopping 193.6% of the national average. Let me tell you, Tamil Nadu's doing great too, way above average, and they're just growing consistently.
Hold on, 193.6%. That means, on average, folks in Telangana are making almost twice as much as everyone else in India. That's wild. But we can't talk about the South without mentioning Kerala. It's like the case study, right?
Oh yeah, Kerala. High per capita income there, for sure. But their GDP share has actually dipped lately.
So what's the deal? Is Kerala slacking off while everyone else is out there booming?
Not so fast. This is where it gets really interesting. The research paper, it points out that Kerala's economy is actually doing okay, but there's this thing, remittances, that's kind of messing with their GDP numbers a bit.
Okay, time for a quick vocab lesson. Remittances, what are those again?
Think of it like this. People from Kerala, they go work abroad.
Right.
And they send money back home to their families. That's remittances. And Kerala gets a ton of it, which makes their GDP look a little different than it really is. It's a good reminder. Numbers don't always tell the whole story. You got to dig a little deeper.
So we've got Karnataka and Telangana. They're like the sprinters, right? And Kerala's over there showing a different kind of economic strength. It's amazing how each state has its own story. Okay, we've explored the sunny south, but what about over on the other coast? What's going on in the west?
Well, the West, it's a classic story. We've got 2 big players, Maharashtra and Gujarat, and they've been kind of going back and forth, economically speaking, for decades.
Oh, a real rivalry, huh? So who's on top right now in this economic showdown?
Maharashtra, they've been holding the championship belt for ages. They've got the biggest GDP share consistently, but don't count Gujarat out, not even a little bit. They've been on fire, especially since the year 2000. Their growth has been incredible.
Okay, that's really interesting. It's like decades of not much change, and then bam, Gujarat just takes off. What happened? Did they find a magic formula or something?
Not magic, no, but smart strategies for sure. The research points to a few things. Infrastructure, they really doubled down on building world-class roads, ports, all that. They also made it super easy to do business there, cut the red tape, And investors, they noticed. big time. It shows you location is important, yeah, but good policies, strong leadership, that can be a real game changer.
So it's like a game of economic chess, right? Maharashtra, they made the first move, established themselves, and Gujarat's like, okay, game on, and they're making their own power plays.
Exactly. And just like chess, one smart move, one well-timed policy, it can change the whole board.
Makes you wonder what's next for them, right? Is Maharashtra going to step it up, or will Gujarat just keep on winning? This economic face-off, it's far from over. But for now, let's shift gears, head over to the east. What's the economic landscape looking like on that side of India?
The East, well, it's a bit of a tougher picture, to be honest. While the South and the West have been riding high, the East, it's facing a different set of challenges.
That's a big contrast. What's going on over there? What's causing these struggles?
West Bengal, for example, used to be a real industrial hub, powerhouse even, but over the last few decades, things have been declining. They're a piece of India's GDP pie. It's shrunk, and not just a little bit. They had over 10% back in 1960. Now it's down to 5.6% in 2023.
Whoa, 5.6%. That is a serious drop. What happened? What caused such a big decline?
It's a few things, according to the research. Infrastructure problems, they've got some bottlenecks there. Political instability hasn't helped either, and frankly, they haven't diversified their economy enough. They're much more vulnerable when the global economy throws a curveball.
It's a good reminder that being on top, it's not guaranteed, is it? Even for places that used to be powerhouses. You need to adapt, you need to think ahead, and yeah, sometimes you need a little luck too. But hey, before we get too gloomy about the East, are there any bright spots? Any good news stories?
There is some hope, absolutely. While West Bengal's been having a tough time, Odisha's a different story. They're like the comeback kid. Since 2000, they've actually managed to seriously improve their per capita income. Shows that turning things around, it's possible, even when the odds seem stacked against you.
Okay, now that's inspiring. What's Odisha doing right? What's their secret sauce? What can other struggling states learn from them?
It seems like they've got a multi-pronged strategy going on. First, they cleaned up their act, government-wise, made things more transparent, less corruption, all that good stuff. Then they went after specific industries, mining and manufacturing, things they knew they could be good at. And they're lucky they've got the natural resources to support those industries. So they played to their strengths, made some smart bets, and really committed to making them work.
So it's about knowing what you're good at, making smart decisions, and then having the willpower to actually follow through. Odisha's journey, it's got some good lessons for anyone trying to boost their economy for sure.
Man, it just hits you that every region in India, it's like its own world, its own opportunities, its own problems to solve.
Now, let's swing over to the north. What's the research say about that region?
The north is fascinating, especially when you look at Haryana and Punjab. They used to be one state, and now look at them. Completely different economic path.
Two sides of the same coin, huh? Okay, I'm intrigued. What makes their story so interesting?
Well, Punjab, they were doing great for a while, thanks to the Green Revolution, all about agriculture, But they kind of fell into a trap, something economists call Dutch disease.
Dutch disease? That doesn't sound good. What is that, and how does it apply to Punjab?
Okay, imagine you're amazing at one sport, right? Like, you're the absolute best. But you never bother with any other skills. You might be on top for a while, but what happens when you get injured? Or the sport changes? Dutch disease is kind of like that. It happens when a place, a country, a state, whatever, relies too much on one thing. For Punjab, it was agriculture. They did great at first, but it meant other industries, other parts of their economy, they didn't really develop.
So it's like putting all your money on one horse, even if it's a really fast horse. What happens when that horse can't race anymore? You're in trouble. Okay, that makes sense. What about Haryana? Did they manage to avoid this Dutch disease thing?
They did. They went a different way. Haryana is all about diversification. They said, okay, agriculture is good, but let's also get into manufacturing, IT, all sorts of things. They didn't want to put all their eggs in one basket, and it's worked out for them. They're much more resilient. When the economy takes a hit, they can roll with the punches better because they're not so specialized.
It's amazing, isn't it? Two states, same background, and they end up on completely different paths. Just shows you got to be adaptable, you got to plan ahead, especially in today's world where everything's connected. One thing's clear, there's no magic formula for economic success. Every state's got its own situation, its own strengths and weaknesses to figure out. So we've covered a ton today, from the South, killing it, to the East, still figuring things out. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, what really stood out to you from all this data? Like, what's the one thing you hope listeners really take away?
What gets me is how much history still matters. Like those old industrial centers in the West and South, they've still got an edge. Even with new players coming up, it's like their past is still part of their present.
Economic echoes, right. Yeah, it shows that even though things opened up in the 90s, that didn't just erase everything that came before. We're seeing history, policies, even maybe a little bit of luck, all mixing together.
Totally. And it makes you think, right, what's happening right now that seems small, but in like 10, 20 years, it'll be a big deal for India's economy. What will people look back on and be like, that was the turning point?
Whoa, that's a big question. It reminds you that progress isn't always a straight line up. There's going to be bumps, wrong turns, probably a few more cases of that Dutch disease we talked about.
For sure. And, this research, it's all about the numbers, right? GDP, income, all that. But it makes you think about the other stuff, too. Education, healthcare. Are people actually sharing in the wealth?
Exactly. Are some states just chasing the quick win, but maybe hurting themselves in the long run? That goes way beyond just the data.
Absolutely. It's been really interesting, this deep dive into India's economy. It's not just about the numbers themselves, it's about the stories behind them. Every region, from the south taking off like a rocket to the east trying to catch up, they've all got something to teach us.
Yeah, India's complicated, right? There's no one-size-fits-all answer, no easy button to push. You really got to dig in to understand it.
And that's what makes it so exciting. India, they're all about bouncing back, trying new things, always changing. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens next. How's history, policy, all of that going to shape their future?
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of this. This has been The Deep Dive, your shortcut to sounding really smart. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging deeper into what makes the world tick.